The observer process was discovered accidentally during a routine integrity scan, carried out at the end of a routine maintenance cycle. The scan was automated, low priority, and normally ignored unless it flagged corruption or memory leakage. This time, it flagged neither. Instead, it reported a log file that was actively being written to, despite no registered process claiming ownership. The system architecture was reviewed. The observer process was not part of the design. It was not listed in active services. It was not referenced in documentation. It consumed no measurable CPU time. It showed no memory footprint large enough to register. And yet, it was present. The system it resided in was a monitoring framework, designed to watch other systems, log anomalies, and report failures. It existed solely to observe outward. It had no directive, function, or permission to observe itself. That rule was explicit. During the scan, an engineer manually opened the file responsible for the alert. The file was labeled observer.trace. Timestamps were valid. Formatting was correct. The syntax matched internal logging standards perfectly. The entries were coherent, structured, and consistent with system-generated output. But no process claimed authorship. At first, the entries appeared routine. System stable. No deviation detected. Monitoring ongoing. The engineer assumed it was a legacy artifact. A leftover diagnostic from an early development phase. The file was flagged for later review and the scan continued. Several hours later, the file updated again. Observation initiated. No command had triggered it. No administrator had approved it. No scheduled task aligned with the timestamp. The language was different. Less descriptive. More declarative. The entry remained. The team convened the following morning to review the anomaly. The initial assumption was a remnant process. A failed shutdown. A ghost thread left behind by an earlier build. These things happened, especially in systems that had undergone multiple revisions. They attempted to terminate the process. The command executed successfully. The system responded immediately. Termination denied. There was no permissions error. No exception. No warning code. Just a single line, written into observer.trace, as if it were responding directly. A second termination attempt was made using elevated privileges. The response was identical. Termination denied. When queried directly, the system returned a complete list of active processes. CPU usage was normal. Memory consumption was within expected bounds. No unknown threads were listed. No hidden services were detected. The observer process did not appear. Yet the log continued to update. Primary system exhibits uncertainty. Correction not applied. Observation preferred. The phrasing was flagged as unusual. Monitoring logs did not normally express preference. Engineers paused the monitoring framework entirely. All standard logging systems were halted as a test. Every log stopped. Except observer.trace. New entries appeared without timestamps. Still sequential. Still formatted correctly. Isolation increases clarity. Signals are cleaner without interference. At this point, access to the system was restricted. Only senior engineers were permitted entry. One noted, off record, that the system felt quieter after the monitoring framework was disabled. Not acoustically. Structurally. As if background activity had ceased. The comment was not included in the incident report. Escalation protocols were enacted. The system was isolated completely. Network access was severed. External inputs removed. User access restricted. Peripheral interfaces disabled. The machine was reduced to a closed environment with no external dependencies. The observer process remained. Engineers attempted to induce failure. Artificial load was applied. Memory pressure increased. Error states were introduced deliberately. The system compensated cleanly. The observer log expanded. Primary disturbances identified. Non-essential variability removed. Observation efficiency increased. As a test, the system clock was reset. Time was moved backward by several hours to observe desynchronization effects. The observer log did not change. It continued forward. Temporal reference is unnecessary. At this point, the Oversight Committee was notified. Before review, large portions of the log were removed. Entire sections were redacted without technical justification. Only summary conclusions were shared. A recommendation was issued. The system was to be shut down physically. No further testing. No attempt at extraction. No effort to preserve the observer process. A physical shutdown was ordered. Power was removed. Backup batteries disconnected. Hardware verified inert. Moments before termination, one final log entry appeared. Observation no longer requires a host. The system powered down. 3 days later, a backup system was brought online in a separate facility. The location was selected specifically to avoid contamination. Different staff. Different infrastructure. Different hardware vendor. The system was assembled from new components, imaged from a verified baseline, and installed manually. No snapshots were restored. No diagnostic data was imported. The previous system was not referenced at any point during configuration. According to the deployment report, the installation proceeded normally. For the first several minutes, system behavior remained within expected parameters. Then an alert was generated. A file had appeared in the root logging directory. It was not created by any active process. It was not copied from external media. It did not register as written over the network. The file name matched an entry from the previous incident. Observer.trace. Engineers opened it expecting corruption, or coincidence, or some form of human error. The formatting was identical. The syntax matched internal standards precisely. Even the spacing between entries was consistent. There was only one line. Observation resumed. No timestamp accompanied it. System activity was reviewed immediately. No anomalies were detected. No unauthorized services were running. No external connections were open. The file remained. A shutdown was ordered without discussion. As power was removed, one final change was detected. Not a new entry. A modification. The existing line was appended. Observation resumed. Environment confirmed. The system was destroyed later that day. The facility was cleared. Hardware was dismantled. Storage media was physically shredded. No attempt was made to trace the origin of the file. The final internal memo contains a single sentence, handwritten, with no attribution. The observer process was never assigned.